I went no contact with my family back in October when my sister told my family about my TikTok, where I had been using it as a space to verbally process the experiences I had in my childhood. And when this happened, my parents contacted me, told me we needed to talk, confronted me on the phone. I told them I didn't want to talk to them again, to leave me alone, and that I was done with that relationship. I immediately reached out to my sister because I was like, what the heck? I thought we were on the same team here. This is one of the biggest betrayals I've ever experienced in my life. My sister and I have two sisters, by the way. My middle sister went no contact long before I did, and is still no contact with all of my family. My youngest sister, which is the one that tattled on me, she and I have had multiple conversations about my parents being abusive and that the things that they had done were abusive. So I contacted her and I asked her, like, why did she do this? And she basically said that she didn't feel comfortable with how much I was sharing online about myself. And what that really translates to me, in my opinion, is jealousy from her. And I am not somebody who's usually, like, prior to this, had ever really shared on social media. But she's very similar to my mom in a lot of ways. And my mom also amplified that by pitting us against one another, triangulating us frequently by, like, asking one of us, like, what's going on in the other's life. And as children, setting a precedent that we were expected to tell her what we knew, and if we didn't, we would get in trouble. And I stopped doing that in adulthood, but my sister did not. My sister would still tell my mom stuff that I told her in confidence and I didn't know. So basically, she was uncomfortable with the fact that I was talking publicly about my autism diagnosis because ableism. She also was uncomfortable with the fact that I was talking about my parents because she felt like they deserved to know so that they could share their side of the story. The side that she and I had talked about over the years multiple times was abuse. And so it just shows how much, like, if you're not ready to confront your own trauma, that you will do things to protect abusers, to keep from rocking the boat, because you're benefiting from the dysfunction in some way. And to be clear, my youngest sister lives in a completely different city from my parents. And so she was able to avoid a lot of the expectations that my parents had for me that were just, like, not healthy, because she wasn't around. My parents had expectations for me to come help around their house a lot, which is fine if I was volunteering to do that, or if, like, I don't know, we'd had a positive relationship, I would have no problem going and helping my parents. But it was like the expectation that, like, if they tell me I need to do something, I have to do it. And they honestly took advantage of me. The reason I think that my sister has continued to protect them is because she financially benefits off of it. And that's all that I'll say about that. And to be honest, there are phases of my life where I financially benefited off of being in a relationship with my parents, but that was the only benefit that I got out of it. And I've talked about it actually a lot on my page, that my parents made that relationship transactional. So the only thing that I could rely on them for was money and gifts. And ultimately, in the past year, when that happened and I had to make that snap decision, I decided it was much worth it to choose my peace over choosing, like, whatever monetary or gift value that my parents could offer me. It just wasn't worth it to me anymore. And for a long time it was, because I only had a teacher's salary and I could barely afford to live. But then I got a new job with a much higher salary. I'm a lot happier, I'm a lot more financially stable. So I did have the privilege to be able to not depend on them. And I did, like, reach out to her. Like, we had a conversation and I basically told her how much it had hurt my feelings, and she responded with, because all of this happened because she was coming into town and I was going to spend time with them. So another reason was she felt like she was afraid that it was going to come out that I had a TikTok, even though I had been spending time with my parents while having a TikTok and never brought it up to them. So the only way it would have been brought up is if she brought it up. But she was worried. This is very telling. She was worried that I was then going to talk about her on my TikTok and it would reflect negatively on her, which I wouldn't have if she asked me to, because I valued that relationship. But the fact that she was worried that it would reflect negatively on her because she knows that she's not a kind person and she does manipulative things constantly. And then if I talked about the things that she did, she knows deep down that people on here would have a problem with the way that she was behaving and the way that she was acting. And at this point, I had done enough therapy that I really could recognize Darvo. So when she responded to me, she basically, like, blamed it on me. She used a lot of Darvo tactics. She didn't acknowledge at all that she'd hurt my feelings. And I basically said, like, I don't think we can have a safe relationship right now because of, like, this massive betrayal that you did and the fact that, like, you are not willing to stand up to our parents for the abuse that you endured. We're just in very different places, and like I can't trust you. And she basically was like, actually, I don't want to have a relationship with you. I think that that's best. Like she tried to flip it on me, which is fine. It's fine. I hope for her sake that someday she goes to therapy. She just doesn't go to therapy, and is able to really start to unpack and process what we went through in our childhood. And if she ever does that and she realizes like the role that she played in some of the abuse that happened with me, she ever reached out to me and apologized, and I can tell that like she's actually changed and she's not gonna like go tell information about me to my parents, then I would be happy to have a relationship with her again. But just at this point, we're in very, very different places. She's not a person that is safe. She's not a kind person. She's not somebody who is working on their healing. She's a deeply traumatized individual who has not done anything to really address or unpack that. So I have no contact with her. Yeah.